It's okay, buddy. Simon. Hi. Come here. Hi. All right. Well, if anybody would like to, we'll have a little preview here. Pretty informal. Yeah, buddy. I got him. He's fine. He's fine. Yeah? I don't care. This isn't really, it's not Bible study. We're just going to have a little preview here.
How long is your preview?
Well, I'm not going to go past 11, so. Are you eating a pen? Don't eat a pen. Yeah. Did you drop the pen? You want a new pen? Here, do you want a remote? There. Yeah. Nice remote. Yeah. Oh, what's that? Lots to see. Well, we'll just do I'm just going to try to fly through this. Wayne Eichstead prepared these slides for his congregation, and he just shared them on Clergy Talk. So I said, why not? Some of the information, barely any of it, some of it has to do with their congregation. Therefore, this is just an overview of the different committees, and he's highlighted there, who from their congregation is on some of these. You can't see it all that well, but it's just the formal organization of our church body. The CLC officers over there, the president, vice president, secretary, moderator, and the conferences and the conference visitors. You can think of them like, you know how in in the Catholic Church they have like bishops who oversee pastors. That's part of what the visitors do. They're also there in case there should be any kind of need for a moderator between a pastor and the congregation. That's something that they do too. Ours is Andy Schaller. He's the conference visitor for the Great Lakes. And then they also help out with other things, like when the president is populating a call list, he asks the conference visitors for any names they'd like to submit. So like a conference visitor might know a reason why it might be good he might have an idea that this guy might be good for a call or something, because he might know those guys at his conference better, stuff like that. And then these are the different boards. Board of Doctrine helps formulate official doctrinal statements, supervises doctrine of publications not already under supervision, conducts colloquies. That's when you have somebody from another church body who wants to become a pastor in our church body, represents the CLC at the request of the convention or president. That one is, you can't see this probably very well, it has 7 members. There has to be 1 layman, but usually all the rest are pastors. It's appointed by the presidium and conference visitors, so it's not elected. And it's appointed each convention. Board of Missions, 2 laymen and 2 called workers. It could be pastor or teacher, 4-year term. Those are elected at convention. Board of Education and Publication, they explore mission fields, they authorize purchases, etc. Board of Education and Publication, pastor, teacher, professor, layman. Well, they really make that one. Oh, Brian. Here, buddy. Right. Here, buddy. You can explore it here, but you can't do that. And the Board of Regents, that oversees Emmanuel. The Board of Trustees overviews the money of the Synod. And then the work that we do at convention has to do with these boards. So there's also then the Coordinating Council. If you ever hear that, Coordinating Council reports, Coordinating Council meetings. That's the president, vice president, secretary, moderator, those officers, plus the ILC president, plus the chairman of the Board of Doctrine, and then 2 people from each of those other boards. And then they meet and go over that work. So Moderators information, that's just like the people involved. So they've got their committee assignments there. That's obviously for their congregation specifically.
Well, who are you? Which one is you?
I'm not on there. I'm the vice chairman of the Committee on Membership and Constitution. So that just means they always try to make a pastor vice chairman so he can do some like devotions and prayers and stuff like that. Okay? You don't really do anything unless your chairman doesn't show up. I mean, you do prayers and stuff, and you do the committee work. The committee one has to look. Each committee is assigned portions of the prospectus, portions of the work that they'll be looking at and working at, and giving a recommendation to the convention about what to do. So committee one has the president's pre-convention report, the president's actual convention report, the Board of Ed and publications, which includes the Christian Education Committee, which is a new thing that we made at the last convention, and they've been working to get set up. That they were asked basically to help working on establishing schools, and a fund was started last time, the Educate Fund, and they got real, I think of Avril Lavigne when I see that, like skater boy, educator boy. Anyway, they've got about 40,000 in that fund, but the problem right now, as they see it, is they're not really sure how to go about allocating that. Like, there's not a budget. You don't know how much it's going to be from year to year. 40,000 is obviously a substantial amount in terms of donations, but you can't like fund the whole school with that, especially when it's not like a yearly amount. So they're working on coming up with guidelines for how to allocate funds, and they're asking for a yearly budget to be allocated to the Christian Education Committee. That's probably not, you probably shouldn't think of that in terms of, they're probably not asking for like, give us $100,000 so we can start schools. They're probably asking for $5,000 to $10,000 for different kind of stuff that they would be doing. One committee I'm on is the committee. This is different than convention committee. Okay, this is a committee, the Christian Education Committee. Committee one is a convention committee. This, a Christian Education Committee, is a committee that is under the Board of Education and Publication and is doing work for them. It is not a convention committee, okay? There's just a difference between those terms. So I'm on the committee on domestic fields. That's that stuff that I do where I go out to different congregations, like I went to Spokane, I'm going to West Columbia, South Carolina. That's for that. That's under the auspices of the Board of Missions, right? And we get a yearly allocation of funds from the Board of Missions for doing some of that work that we do, like flying to South Carolina to do a seminar, that sort of thing. Right?
So did the CEC like make a budget already and they're just proposing it?
That may be, probably. Yep. So another thing they do is they oversee the websites and different domain names and things, and they'll have to look at that. Also included there is the recruiter to the public ministry, which is Sam Rodabaugh, and the worship committee, which I'm also on, but we never do anything. We try to do things, and it's always like, hey, should we meet? And radio silence. Part of it is we don't entirely know what they want us to do, right? The worship committee was created by the convention with 4 things to do in like 2004 or something, and then they did all those things, and then they were like, they're still there, and then we're like, do you want us to do more things? And anyway. Committee 2, Board of Regents report. Some of the things that are coming up in there is they're working on some dual credit classes, meaning classes that you can get credit for in high school and then you can also get credit for in college. Emmanuel has a number of those that they've gotten some of that credit for. There's several of them there. They're working to do more of that. They also mentioned the transfer and articulation agreements that they have for the 2-year program for college at Emmanuel. So they've had this for quite a while with UW Eau Claire. They also have with Chippewa Valley Tech, UW Stout. Those are like formal ones, but they also have a lot of like informal ones. People from Emmanuel have transferred those credits to Stanford, to Minnesota State. The truth is that likely you could transfer most of them or all of them pretty much anywhere. You know, you have formal agreements, and then because they have formal agreements, that helps them to, you know, hey, you want to go to school, and then the college dean will work with that student and with that university on doing that. So that's a good thing to remember in terms of, like, this is way cheaper than going to any other college. And so if you are like not sure, or if you weren't able to go before, or you just want to like spend less money while you get your generals, you probably will. One of the downsides is that it probably will mean that you'll take. Rachel was telling me about this. You'll have all your generals, and then you'll have all of your specific classes at the other college. So those years might be less enjoyable. It might be more jam-packed, and it might be 5 years. Although that often happens these days. It's often 5 years instead of 4. But it's just another thing there. They added a class, Distinguishing Law and Gospel. I saw that, and I was like, I wonder what textbook they're using. And of course, it's Walther's Law and Gospel that we're going to be looking at for our midweek Bible studies this summer, which is going to go past the summer, by the way. But
So is that, are they taking that from Prof. Lau's? Because Prof. Lau went through that in one of his religion classes.
well, he talked about it. No. So like he talked about the concept. You're talking about religion methods in college with Prof.
He
Lau.
got the book.
Okay. Did he have us read
I
the whole
read
thing?
through, I have it.
Okay, yeah, I've got it too.
Through it, but I don't know.
So, though this is a separate class that's going to be added for fourth year pre-the and teaching students, and going through that. So, they dropped some classes, and there's a discussion about whether they still should have a requirement for teachers to take piano and organ for 4 years or for 4 semesters. I'm talking about dropping that to 2. I think honestly, I don't know that I really get this. Their contention is, well, we don't want to like dissuade anyone from coming to be a teacher. And I'm like, is anyone really going to be like, well, I was going to go to Manual to be a teacher, but since I had to take 4 semesters of piano instead of 2, then I'm not. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't really feel like that's true. And people were arguing, do we really need them to? And I'm like, I don't know, like, it seems pretty useful. There's always a piano around, and when you're teaching, it's very useful to be able to, 4 semesters is not going to make you a maestro, but it's going to give you enough understanding of it. You can at least plunk the ivories a little bit. I would say, one thing was talked about a little bit was like, does it have to be piano? And I would say no. If somebody comes in and they know how to play the guitar, that can serve them just as well in a classroom, and obviously they can bring that in. And that's great. If they wanted to expand it to like, doesn't have to be just piano, perfect. But I don't know, in my opinion, I don't know that there's a whole lot of point in this.
A lot of colleges will have like, competency exam.
Yeah.
Where they do that, and you can test out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think they do like college students test out, because I think one of my classmates, they tested.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah.
So I think
That would be something to strive towards instead of just 2 years of piano lessons, but you're taking lessons to pass this proficiency
Sure,
exam.
sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
3 semesters, then they're done.
Yeah, good point. Committee 2 has the Board of Regents report, and one thing on there is they're recommending that the Emmanuel Professorage Committee be discontinued because it's done basically all the stuff they wanted to do. They started it because they're like, we have a whole bunch of work to do on these professorages. They kind of did it all, and in general, I think this is a wise approach to committees. It does what it was supposed to do, and you don't have anything else you currently want it to do, you can just be done with it. Okay? You can dissolve it. There's some stuff about grants. So there's a lot of grants currently. So fiscal year 25 grant for college and seminary is $3,500 per student per year. That's for the public ministry. So that'll cover 56% of the tuition for college, 78% for seminary. And then there's also one for AA students. That's the 2-year. That covers 35% of the tuition. And then it's also going to be, actually, I think this one is also for education. I thought they had a separate one. I'm pretty sure that's also for education students. And it's also going to be used to help them when they're teaching and vicaring as part of their training, to provide some kind of assistance while they're out doing that and they can't work. The Partners in Ministry program, that's people donating to help pay off the student loans of called workers who are already in the ministry. And, they have a lot of stuff donated there. Board of Regents talks about the lay ministry support. There's a lot of talk ongoing about how to try to get more people to be pastors. There's different paths. let me summarize this. The traditional 7-year path, that's me. 4 years college, 3 years seminary, right? By reduced 5-year paths, there's two similar ones, and they're basically the same. I'll give you the simplest example would just be like Pastor Sowers or Missionary Evenson. Those two actually, well, Pastor Sowers had a pre-theological degree already, so that was even easier. Now, those guys both had to go for 5 years to Emmanuel. They had to take 2 years in college. I think it used to be that somebody like Rob, or Pastor Sowers, who had that pre-theological degree, his from a Concordia somewhere, I think, wouldn't have had to do the 2 years of pre-the work, but they had issues at some point, depending on where that was coming from. And they've looked into it, and at least my dad, what he's said from what he's looked into it is that the requirements are just not the same. For instance, like at Bethany, which is the ELS college, I believe he said they only require 2 years of Greek in pre-the. We require 4. So, like if somebody wanted to say, first of all, this would be a very foolish idea, but let's say somebody in the CLC was like, oh, I'm just going to go to Bethany because it's over here. I'm going to get my pre-the degree there and then go to Emmanuel for seminary. That's very dumb, by the way. Like, it's a very silly idea. But if they did that, they'd have to go to 2 years of pre-the at Emmanuel, because we want them to get those full years of Greek, and we want them to get some of our religion classes. So that's what that 5-year thing is. And then the reduced 5-year number 3 is for people who are like 30 years or older. They have a limited amount of previous college education. They maybe don't have a 4-year degree like in number 2, but we're trying to help them speed it along a little bit. So that's also a 5-year thing where you're kind of cramming some of that stuff. There's also this reduced 3-year path called the Limited Public Ministry. That's been around for a long time. Hardly anyone's ever done it. It is a 3-year program that trains somebody to be like an assistant pastor, basically. And that's probably largely one that there's like one person or maybe 2 people that have done it that I know of. There's very limited use for that in the synod. It would kind of have to be, and there could be a use for it, and there could be an expanding use for it, but it kind of have to be at a church where there's more than one pastor. Yeah.
What do you think the thought behind having an age limit on it is?
I think that they're trying to they're trying to help people in certain situations who might want to come but think it's too daunting, while not I don't know that they need to worry about this, while not trying to make it something that people could use to just skip around the 7 years when they really could be and should be going to the 7 years. I think that's kind of the idea. I need to go back one. Where am I? There we go. Thank you. All right, this is a memorial from Pastor Tiefel about the shortage of pastors and teachers. He lays out some of the stats and some of the issues. By the way, a memorial is a thing that can be sent to the convention, asking the convention to do something. And that can be sent by a pastor or teacher or a congregation or a conference. Okay? He's just mentioned some of the vacancies, and then he talks about here what's coming up. So a few things that are notable that are really helpful. One, we had some really good news, wonderful news, that Sam Nauman has applied for re-entry into the ministry. So that could help a lot, because getting somebody back that we lost after 3-4 years, right? So there's a committee that's been appointed by the president to review that with him and his situation, and they're hopeful that he'll be eligible for a call soon. So that would ultimately wipe out one of our 2 current vacancies. So, you might think, oh, only 1 vacancy, that's not so bad. Well, the problem is, out of 57 pastors, 5 are over 70, 12 are 65 to 70, 21 are over 60. Now, he's talking like the teacher situation is similar. It's not. Honestly, the teacher situation isn't really much of a problem. Yeah, there are some vacancies here or there. That always happens. But there are a lot, look at the difference. Out of 55, 3 are between 65 and 70. It's not at all the same kind of situation. And we've got a whole bunch of people scattered throughout the synod in different congregations that are teachers. And people know this, and you know they don't always take a call, but sometimes they do, and you see congregations trying that, and it's a whole lot easier to make up that problem than the pastor one. So I honestly have no concerns about the teaching situation. Maybe others do, whatever. I don't think so.
The 57 pastors, that include professors?
Yes, it would. Well, it would the ones who are theologically trained professors. So then here's a chart about people in different years. So the problem here, this is the pre-theology program and the teaching program. Again, you got look at how many are freshmen and sophomores here. In both the pre-theology and teaching programs, 8 in the first 2 years. Guess how many years ago we started the Recruiter to the Public Ministry program? It's 2 years ago at convention. So I think obviously this is very hopeful and very helpful, and tells me that Sam's really helping with that in his work to do that.
Do you know of a trend of people dropping out after their sophomore year?
Look, yeah, like the chances of all 8 sticking all the way through probably aren't the best, but I can't think of any time where we had 8 people in pre-thea.
Not that this is a bad.
You know, like even if we lost one or
like
two,
statistically,
I don't know what the statistics are. My vague impression is that, yeah, some will, but it's not most of them. I couldn't give you a number, of course. You know, I asked Dad how they did this year, and he said that I think he said that 7 of them did great. One of them not as great, but he thought he could. You know, so that's hopeful too. That's the pre-theology side. So the issue there is that means there was one senior in pre-theology this year, so he'll be in seminary. He'll be the only seminarian next year. He'll be the only seminarian up until his senior year, right? So that means that for 3 years now, we won't have a graduate for 3 years, and we'll have one, and then we won't have one for 2 more years after that. Okay? So in 5 years, we'll have one SEM graduate. That's where the concern is. However, okay, somebody pointed out at conference, Pastor Chief he's rightfully trying to draw this attention, we kind of know this, but he also kind of painted with this with a bit of a black brush. Because he was like, we're only going to have one pastor graduate in 5 years, and look at all these old pastors. It's like, okay, yeah, but we'll have 9 graduates in 7 years, currently speaking, right? And then Sam Nalman coming back, and there's also a guy out in Tim Dowd's congregation who intends on going through colloquy soonish. You might have heard about him at some point in the past. He isn't yet because I think he has like a year or 2 left before he can get pension for his first career. And he was a pastor, now he's working, I don't know what he is, some government job, right? So if he can go for a year or 2 more, get pension, retire, I think he's like, mid-50s or something, then take colloquy. So there's another kind of help coming in that way. So this could help a lot with some of that older stuff. We need more, we need this to continue, right? But look, man, I don't think we've ever graduated 8 pastors in a 2-year period. And if we have, it's been 30 years or so since we have. So that would be huge. He has several suggestions. The first one is pray. Great, I'm down with that. Let's do that. The second one is to direct the Board of Trustees to create and implement a 5-year funding plan, basically to not only make it free, but to give students a monthly stipend to go to preaching and teaching programs at ILC. I mean, I don't have a problem with this, but I don't know that it's, I don't know.
Is that the problem?
I don't know that that's the problem. I doubt that that's the problem. It's already very, very, very affordable, okay? I highly doubt that there is anyone out there thinking about coming to be a pastor or a teacher and thinking, I just can't pull it. I should go to
Christian day schools.
I
At the bottom.
agree with that, but that's there through the Educate Fund already. So if people want to do this, okay, fine. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will help. Personally, I kind of doubt it. You can have a part-time job while you're in pre-thea and SEM. I did. You can. It's through most of it, but that was because then we got married and we were living in Hudson and I didn't have time anymore. And I didn't need to anymore. Yep. So the third one he says is, I'm sorry, I don't get this one. Direct the ILC teaching department to ready at least 2 candidates to be able to enter the teaching ministry. This is by next year, in addition to anyone who's already going to be graduating next year. I think, I was like, you want them to pull this out of their hat? I think he's asking them to speed along a couple of people. And I don't think that, first of all, I don't think there's a need for that. Like I said, I don't think there's this real shortage of teachers.
Well, like 5 all retired this last year.
Right, and that created a whole stir, right, of like boiling, like moving around. But there are still teachers out there.
Yeah.
And there is one graduate coming.
There is that kind of the argument of if you shut a school down for even a year and you lose all these
Sure.
non-member kids,
True.
how likely are they to come back?
True.
Sorry.
Right. So look, if they think this can be done, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I'm not,
I don't understand.
I would hope, and I'm sure we'll find out, I would hope that before anything like this was done, they asked the ILC teaching department, like, do you think that's a good idea and do you think it can be done? We should not direct them to do this unless they think it's a good idea.
Yeah, because this is our children's education. We don't really want people who don't really know fully
That's
how
correct.
to teach
That's correct.
in our schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like an intern, you put them in a school that's already got somebody.
Maybe, that might work. That might work.
So you're kind of
I
like
mean,
learning
yeah.
as you
It's
go.
essentially like a
Yeah, like a practice teaching.
I
practice teaching, but just do that longer.
I think doing longer practice teaching and like helping
That
out
could
as
work.
assistant, doing more of like a
At a school like
what is-
Messiah,
what is that,
especially, where they,
apprenticeship type of thing. If we're like
Yeah.
you're learning on the job. And
Yeah.
you're,
And I feel like at that point, like, I mean,
I learned
Obviously,
more in my practice
classroom-
teaching than some of the
classroom's great, yeah,
classes.
just like a
You're aware of that,
practice
like,
teacher.
you coming back to school was hilarious. You're like, why didn't you just go and help out that school?
Yeah. This one is bonkers. Sorry. I appreciate him coming up with suggestions, by the way, right? Like he's coming up with ideas. But this is not workable. The idea here is we only have 1 seminary student. We have like 4 professors who do a lot of their work in the seminary. Well, 4 for 1, we should be able to adjust their load and send one of them off for a year to go preach somewhere. It does not work like that. Having 1 seminary student or having 7 seminary students doesn't make any difference in how much work they're doing, because it is a rotation of classes, and all your classes in SEM except for 1 are all together. There is a second-year homiletics thing that's on its own. That's it. Everything else is all together. So there's exactly 1 class that won't be happening next year because there's only 1 seminarian. You can't reshuffle it and be like, because the guys who are doing it are the guys who are the pastorally trained guys, and none of the other professors there can do those things in the seminary. So there's really no way to do what he's talking about, in my opinion, and my dad agrees.
So how many, are there any statistics as to those that went through the they got married, they're just out there, they didn't take a call, whatever?
Ah, gotcha.
About encouraging them to, let's try and make it work for you, that you can accept a call.
Yeah, I
know
don't-
the statistics, but it
Yeah.
always seems like, they go through the whole seminary and then they get married and then it doesn't work.
So there are a few people like what you're describing. Most of the people like that in the synod are people who were pastors for a while and then resigned from the public ministry, usually for some kind of health reason. For instance, because it's public knowledge, there's nothing bad about it, Pastor Mark Gurath, who was in Sioux Falls, his doctor basically told him, your heart can't handle being a pastor. He resigned for that reason, right? And there are some other situations like that, and there are some that are for different reasons, but are still, apparently not something people can overcome. To my memory, there's 1 person in the last, 20 years who graduated from seminary and said, I am not going to consider a call. And he actually did receive some calls later and returned them. I don't know that it's impossible that he'll ever decide he can, but he doesn't think that he's up to it. So From what I know about him, I'd say he probably is. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe his pastor encourages him. Anyway, yeah, I don't think that one's doable. This one is, as possible emergency help, direct the president of the CLC to appoint a committee to prepare a two-year lay training program for review. I don't know what that's supposed to do exactly. You can,
Training to become a pastor.
I think that's the idea. So again, I appreciate his coming up with ideas, but so he was on the committee that was appointed a few years ago to try to come up with some suggestions, and they brought one to the convention, and it was this idea to try to ready some second career type guys in 2 years, and it was not, it just wasn't good enough. It also probably wasn't doable, but part of what's happening here is this idea that some people are like, well, you know, if we cut the languages, then we could maybe fast track it in 2 years. And in my opinion, this is a bad idea. In the opinion of all seminary professors, this is a bad idea. And we don't want to do that. So that'll be there. Thank the LC recruiter for his work and ask him to keep doing it. Yeah, okay, sure, agree with that. This is stuff from, this is nothing new here. This is just the expansion program committee. This is the order of what they want to do. Gymnasium, theater, chapel, then eventually, it's going to be a while. Because this gym was accepted once the funding comes through. We'll see that.
Where are they gonna put that?
I'll show you in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, basically where the softball field is, built into the hillside. Softball field will move to where the amphitheater was. They'll clear out some of those woods. Imagine like, you know, like the fence being over by like where the creek is, or you know, that kind of thing. All right, so that's just the order of things they want to do after that. They're working on separating those projects. They need to get, all right, just to break this down, there's $3 million of funding of a loan from the CEF, okay? And there's $1.5 million in the building fund. Currently, they need approximately $10 million for the gym project, okay? So before that can begin, they need $7 million in the bank. They have $1.5 million in the bank. So that'll happen when we get to 7 million, unless when we get to 7 million, the project is actually going to cost 12 million, and then we'll just keep going. That's kind of the thing. So, Board of Missions is just they have an accounting of all the things. I can't go through it in detail. There's a lot of information in there about all kinds of mission stuff that's going on in all kinds of countries, as usual, and it just continues to expand. Board of Doctrine report. They have a history of the CLC discussions with the WELS and ELS, document classification report, like what are these things? A digital registry of different like official teachings, close communion study, that's because of the stuff that's going on in the ELS. And then these colloquies, the Palangius one is the pastor in the Philippines, in a church body that we're declaring fellowship with at this convention. And Tony Bolin, that's the guy I mentioned before. It's not ongoing, but it's a report about that. That's the guy in Tim Dobbs' congregation. The Board of Doctrine has a report. This hopefully won't actually be contentious, but there's like one guy that it might be too. I don't know. Tara is a document that the Board of Doctrine used originally as a study document. Then it served as the basis for the original 1990 joint statement, which was then the basis for the 2016-15 joint statement, okay? And a lot of us kind of don't think it was good enough. We don't think it was wrong, but we ultimately were like, this isn't good enough. So some people are like, we thought this was an official document. And then others are like, no, it was never an official document, etc. So they asked the Pastoral Conference to look at it. The Pastoral Conference looked at it, kind of ran our wheels over the same things. And we had a different document that we looked at that we thought was great. There's a memorial about that, asking us to recognize Tara as an as a scriptural document that's available for use but not official, and that the General Pastoral Conference, that their work regarding Tara should be concluded, and we don't need to mess with it anymore. So they're just saying, this is what it's always been. It's never actually been an official document. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not official. let's just leave it at that, and let's move on, is what they're asking for, and I think that's what most people think.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why does it matter?
Well, if it's admittedly, some of the issues in our discussions with the wells and ELS were because the document that we came up with, which wasn't really good enough for what we were looking to do, was ours. Okay? It was basically all ours. And then there was many conventions where we were like, this is bad because of this and this and this. And it's like, okay, I see what you're saying, but also this was our document. And then people were like, why do we have a problem with this now if we didn't before? And there was some confusion about some of those things. And so then some people thought, so part of the issue with that too is that Tara at one point, way long ago, like 36 years ago, was sent to the Wells and ELS by someone from the Board of Doctrine, I think, as representative of our teaching. So then somebody is like, well, doesn't that make it official? No, it doesn't make it official, right? An official teaching of the Synod is something accepted by the convention as an official confession of the Synod, okay? So that created some confusion, and anyway, that's that. That's the memorial I just talked about. There's also another document that we looked at that we thought was much better and much cleaner and much clearer, and that will be presented at convention. That's just us. These talks aren't going on anymore. The trustees report just talks about basically, well, one idea somebody had, by the way, somebody was like, maybe we should sell part of the property on campus. You know that part that, you know how if you go down Lowe's Creek Road behind campus, there's all that wood? We own all that, right, on the other side of the creek. And they looked at it and they're like, it's not worth that much. It's only worth $237,000 because a lot of it's floodplain, and we prefer just to keep that anyway, if we're not going to get all that much for it. They're continuing the increase of salary based on the COLA increases. That's what they're proposing for that. The statistician report, that's stuff about the discussions with Wells and ELS. Okay, this has to do with the bylaws. So the Board of Doctrine currently, all right, let me just break this down really simply. There was also a bit of an argument about this regarding the joint statement discussions, because what happened is this discussion grew up kind of organically, and then the president asked these three guys to go be this committee to talk with people from Wells and ELS, okay? And some people said, wait, the Board of Doctrine should be involved. And other people said, no, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. And they pointed to wording in the Constitution. So there was some ambiguity about what the Constitution meant. So at the last convention, the convention asked the Constitution Committee to bring wording to reflect the idea going forward to make it clear that the president can involve the Board of Doctrine but doesn't have to. The committee brought that wording, but then said, we did our homework, here's the wording you asked for, you should not do this, here's why, and instead, you should change the wording to this, which makes it clear that the president must involve the Board of Doctrine in any intersynodical discussions. So that's what's going on there with that. They did not show I thought he would have on there. It's in the prospectus if you want to see photos of the renderings of what it would look like. But yeah, basically, the plan is, the first thing is build the gym into the hillside there. The top level would be level with like the commons. You'd come out the door of the commons, and you'd go right across that little bit of parking lot where that hill is, and you'd walk right into doors. It would bring you to the upper level of the gym. So the upper level has like a concourse, a like eating area, stands. It has it's a 750 seat arena, you know, like a normal large high school arena, rather than like what ours is currently. And then on the lower floor, it's got offices and gym, like weight rooms and stuff like that. It's got 2 full courts for practice stuff. That's what they were doing. Anyway, and then after that, they would tear down the current gym, and they would build a theater, fine arts center, which would have 240 seats, I guess, you know, and that would also be for chapel. But it doesn't look like a chapel. in my opinion, great, do it. But can we at least put some like stained glass windows or something in this thing so it's not just a theater? Like, but whatever. That's pretty much it. Any questions?
How many, do you just need majority to get something?
Depends. For a change of the Constitution, you need a 2/3 majority. For recommendations, memorials, and things like this, it's a simple majority. But if it's a change of the Constitution, then it's a majority.
So everyone just raise their hand?
There actually is electronic voting. There was a hilarious exchange. They have electronic voting for some of these things anyway. You know, for like a lot of your basic motions, they'll just do the typical all in favor say aye, and then the moderator. This is just a skill, I guess, that Pastor Nolting has from years of doing this. He just declares who won. It's usually easy, and then if he says it was this, he says the ayes have it or whatever, and then if somebody disagrees, they'll go division. And then you have to stand, and then they count. And if he can't tell, then he calls for division, and then you count. And then for stuff like voting for offices, that's electronic voting. And it was hilarious because a thing got sent out just to register with your email for that beforehand. And then one pastor who isn't retiring soon, and isn't that surprising that this would be the case, was like, I don't have an electronic device. They'll provide. They give one. They give one if you don't have one. But it just cracked me up. This response from clergy talk, I don't have an electronic device. And I was like, of course you don't. But, yeah. All right. Yeah.
There's also obviously the information